And there has been a lot going on. Since November, there have been 8 civil lawsuits filed against Diddy. 7 of them accuse him of assault.
I'm not sure. I don't buy for a minute that he's going to prison without getting out of here somewhere and stashing $2 billion or whatever. I think he has that kind of power, meaning Sean himself. But remember, it goes a lot deeper than that.
Let's unravel a story that's got Hollywood buzzing and the public glued to every twist. Terrence Howard, a man who's seen the heights of stardom and the shadows of an industry riddled with complications, has come forward with allegations that go beyond shocking. They're seismic. His claims against Sean Diddy Combs have set the stage for one of the most sensational narratives to emerge from the entertainment world in years. But this isn't just about one man's story. It's about a culture, a system, and the lengths people will go to climb or stay at the top.
Card.
What is that? What do you mean by that?
You give up your ability, your right to being a man. A man don't take it, a man gives it. So when you give up that man card, you don't get that back.
Are you saying what I think you're saying?
No, I'm saying what I'm saying.
Terrence Howard has always been a figure of intrigue, known for his intensity on screen and his intellectual eccentricities off it. He's no stranger to controversy. But this time, he's not talking about math theories or his Hollywood paychecks. He's opening the door to a world that most people only hear about in whispers. A world of power plays, moral compromises, and a kind of pressure that can crack even the strongest foundation. Howard's words are cutting and deliberate, laced with a rawness that suggests he's not just speaking for himself, but for a generation of artists who've seen what it takes to survive in an industry where survival often comes at a price. Howard describes an encounter with Diddy that feels more like a chess game than a casual meeting. According to Howard, Diddy wasn't just interested in his acting or his music. There was something deeper, something darker at play. Diddy, Howard claims, tried to pull him into a vortex of influence, a space where boundaries blur and personal principles are tested. Howard paints a vivid picture of being invited into Diddy's orbit under the guise of collaboration, only to find himself in situations that felt less about artistry and more about control.
Did you ever have the opportunity where you got invited and you said no to it?
Hell yeah.
What was the consequences when you said no?
Puffy invited me for weeks, asking me to come and teach him how to, wanted me to be his acting coach for a while. Go there and he's sitting around just looking. I'm like, okay, what's the material you want to work on? He's just looking at me.
And it's not just Diddy's alleged behavior that Howard is calling out. He's pointing fingers at an entire ecosystem that enables this kind of conduct. Howard's language is precise and cutting, accusing industry players of losing themselves in the pursuit of fame and fortune. He talks about people who traded their integrity for access, who left their values at the door to stay in the good graces of the power brokers. His words are a direct hit on the culture of celebrity itself. The parties, the deals, the whispered promises that lead to compromises no one wants to admit. But Howard didn't stop at broad strokes. He got specific. He described how he saw others give up their sense of self just to be part of the inner circle, how they justified actions that left them hollow. And then there's his own story, how he almost fell into the same trap, but managed to pull himself back before it was too late. He talks about the moment he realized what was really happening, the advice from his assistant that made everything click. It's a story of near misses and close calls, of recognizing the danger just in time. But the way Howard tells it, not everyone was so lucky.
Will you help me? I want to hear your music. So I come over there and I play the music. And he's sitting there, just looking at me, like waiting. Okay. So then my assistant was like, he wants to hang out with you next week. And I was like, for what? He's like, I think he's trying to you. That's what my assistant said. And I was like, oh, okay. Now I get it. So now no more communication.
One of the most jarring elements of Howard's revelations is his critique of what he calls the fluidity that takes over when people abandon their integrity. He uses the word like a weapon, a way to describe the loss of structure and the erosion of self that happens when people give in to the pressures around them. It's not just a metaphor for Howard, it's a warning. Once you cross certain lines, he says, there's no going back. You become unmoored, untethered, a version of yourself that you don't recognize. And according to Howard, this is exactly what's happened to many people in the industry. Howard's allegations aren't just about Diddy. They're about a culture of complicity. He calls out the enablers, the bystanders, the people who look the other way because it's easier than confronting the truth. He talks about the cost of silence, the toll it takes on those who carry the weight of what they've seen and done, and he's not afraid to name names, or at least to hint at them. He suggests that some of the biggest stars in the world have been caught up in this web, that the trauma they carry is visible if you know where to look. It's a chilling thought, made even more so by Howard's conviction.
No, I get it. So you see some guys struggling with that. You see Bieber struggling with that. You see some of these guys struggling with that.
They can't get it out of their head. They can't get it out of their head.
It's no wonder that 50 Cent has taken an interest in this story. Known for his sharp tongue and his willingness to take on anyone, 50 has a history with Diddy that adds another layer of intrigue to the narrative. He has already hinted that he might have saved Howard from falling into the same traps as others, and now he's reportedly working on a docuseries that promises to blow the lid off the whole thing. The fact that 50 Cent is involved only raises the stakes, turning what might have been a personal revelation into a cultural moment. And then there's the question of Justin Bieber. Howard's comments about others who've been caught up in similar situations have led to rampant speculation, and Bieber's name has been floated more than once. The resurfaced clips of Bieber with Diddy, the awkward interactions, the cryptic comments, they all take on a new light in the wake of Howard's allegations. The idea that someone as high profile as Bieber might be connected to this story adds another layer of complexity, another thread to pull. And if Howard is right, the trauma of these experiences doesn't just disappear. It lingers, it festers, it shapes the people involved in ways they might not even realize.
It was just an escape for me. I was just young, like everybody in the industry and people in the world who experiment and do.
Howard's critique extends beyond individuals to the entire structure of the entertainment industry. He talks about the way the system rewards compliance and punishes dissent, how it creates an environment where people feel they have to choose between their dreams and their dignity. It's a damning indictment, one that feels all the more powerful coming from someone who's been on the inside. Howard doesn't just want to tell his story. He wants to change the narrative, to shine a light on the parts of the industry that most people prefer to ignore. But as Howard's story unfolds, it becomes clear that this is just the beginning. The allegations against Diddy are the spark, but the fire is spreading. Howard's words have opened the door to a larger conversation, one that touches on power, control, and the cost of fame. It's a conversation that's long overdue, and one that promises to get even more explosive as new details come to light. The question isn't just what happened, it's who else knew, who else was involved, and how far this really goes.
Look at Diddy, for instance. Let's take a look at him. Let's take a look at, he has videos. He has videos of the parties. Now, what I've heard, which I don't know how much of it is in mainstream media, I don't really follow the story that much, but what I've heard from friends that are attorneys, friends of mine that have represented me before, agents and so on, is there's a bidding war going on right now.
But here's where this story takes an even darker turn. Terrence Howard's revelations about Diddy were just the catalyst for a much bigger unraveling. The deeper you dig, the more it feels like pulling on a thread that might just unravel the entire fabric of Hollywood itself. Because what Howard exposed wasn't just one man's questionable behavior. It was a glimpse into an entire ecosystem of unchecked power, egos inflated beyond comprehension, and a culture that not only tolerates, but seems to reward moral decay. And while Howard barely escaped, many others seem to have been swallowed whole. Let's talk about Diddy's infamous parties, the ones whispered about in industry circles for years, but never truly brought into the harsh light of public scrutiny. These weren't just your average celebrity gatherings with designer suits. No, these were something else entirely. Exclusive, late-night affairs where only the select few were invited, and the rules of normal society didn't seem to apply. Attendees ranged from A-list actors and chart-topping musicians to young up-and-comers desperate for a breakthrough. And according to those who've dared to speak out, these events weren't just parties. They were auditions, tests of loyalty. Your willingness to play along could make or break your career.
To not be involved with a famous singer, to not come out, here's the price. And that they're just selling to the individuals that are in those, this is what I heard, they're selling those videos. So if you're Tommy X, and Tommy X is a big movie star, and he was at some of the Diddy parties, he was in one of those bedrooms with 3 other men, and he's happily married to a woman, and blah. Tommy doesn't want that video to come out.
Here's where the stakes get real. Rumors have swirled for years that some of the most beloved names in the industry had their first taste of fame at these gatherings, but at what cost? The stories are harrowing. Promises of mentorship and collaboration morphing into situations no one signed up for. And while most people who attended have remained silent, either out of shame, fear, or some unspoken understanding of the consequences, cracks are starting to form in that wall of silence. It's not just Terrence Howard who's talking. Others are beginning to hint at experiences that sound eerily similar, though no one has yet come forward with the same level of detail. The question is, who's going to be brave enough to step into the light next? But even beyond the parties, Diddy's reputation for wielding power like a weapon has become impossible to ignore. Insiders describe him as a man who thrives on control. Control over people, control over narratives, and most importantly, control over his public image. He's long been celebrated as a savvy businessman, someone who built an empire from nothing, but the cracks in that image are becoming impossible to ignore. The recent lawsuits, the whispers of coercion, the allegations of manipulation, it all paints a picture of a man whose rise to the top may not have been as glamorous as it seemed. And let's not forget, this isn't the first time Diddy's name has been linked to controversy. Far from it.
Did you ever spend time with the guy? Did you ever meet Diddy?
I've met him before, yeah.
How was he?
Very nice guy, very smart, super business. You know, I mean, he's very successful.
Remember the legal battles that have dogged him for years? From disputes with former collaborators to allegations of underhanded business tactics, Diddy's career has been littered with moments that should have raised more eyebrows than they did. Take, for instance, his well-documented falling out with former protégés. Time and again, artists who once sang his praises have later accused him of exploitation, of taking advantage of their trust and using it to line his own pocket. And yet, he's always managed to come out unscathed. His reputation intact, his empire growing. How? It's a question that becomes harder to answer the more you learn about the people he's allegedly left in his wake. But perhaps the most damning allegations aren't about money or business. They're about the way Diddy has reportedly treated those closest to him. Former friends and associates describe a man who operates in shades of intimidation, who knows exactly how to push people to their breaking point while keeping his own hands clean. And the more you hear these stories, the more they start to sound like a pattern of behavior that suggests Diddy's influence isn't just about power, it's about fear. Fear of being blacklisted, fear of being humiliated, fear of facing whatever consequences he might choose to impose.
I'll tell you, I don't know how much, I don't like to say things that I know unless I see it. There's a little difference, you know. But was it discussed? Was there descriptions from people I know that were at those? Yes, but here's another thing. So how many of these big entertainment parties and over the years and everything with as successful as you are, have you been around? Does anyone ever come up to you at a certain hour and say, okay, it's time to go? At those parties, they did.
And let's not forget the role of the enablers, the people who've stood by and watched all of this unfold without saying a word. Because for every Terrence Howard who's willing to speak out, there are dozens, if not hundreds of others who've stayed silent. Some because they benefited from the system, others because they were too scared to rock the boat. And then there are those who've tried to speak up, only to find themselves shut down, their careers suddenly stalled, their opportunities evaporating into thin air. It's a chilling reminder of just how powerful the gatekeepers of Hollywood can be, and just how much they have to lose if the truth ever fully comes out. But here's the kicker. This isn't just about Diddy. He may be the face of this particular storm, but the issues go far deeper than one man. What Terrence Howard has exposed is a culture, a system that allows people like Diddy to thrive, a system that rewards silence and punishes dissent, that values profit over people, that turns a blind eye to the kind of behavior that would be unacceptable in any other context. And while Diddy's name is the one making headlines right now, you have to wonder, how many other powerful figures are hiding skeletons in their closets? How many more stories are waiting to be told?
People I don't think realized was he had cameras all over the place, unbeknownst to them. And now he has all that footage, supposedly. This is what I'm told. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens if, you know, you're a huge, iconic, you know, TV star or movie star, and you're in some very, very...
It's impossible to ignore the whispers surrounding other figures closely tied to Diddy's rise. One of them being Jay-Z. While Jay-Z has tried to distance himself from the fallout, claiming that he and Diddy were never as close as people believed, the receipts suggest otherwise. Old footage of Diddy calling Jay-Z his right or fall, and the first person he'd call in a crisis, paints a starkly different picture. And some of those who've been caught in the crossfire of their alleged schemes are finally starting to come forward. One former associate of both men has hinted at being pushed into signing exploitative contracts that left them financially drained and emotionally devastated. This wasn't just bad business. It was a calculated effort to control and silence anyone who didn't fall in line.
And we do have some breaking news that we want to bring to you. It was being reported by TMZ and now Fox News. We are learning that Jay-Z is accused of a 13-year-old girl that is new in the Diddy lawsuit.
And then there's the case of a young songwriter who worked under both Diddy and Jay-Z during their early years in the industry. This individual, whose name has been deliberately buried by legal teams, has spoken privately about the emotional toll of working with the two moguls. According to sources connected to the songwriter, they were manipulated into giving away credits on multiple hit tracks in exchange for vague promises of future opportunities that never materialized. The songwriter's career was effectively stunted, and they're now reportedly working on a tell-all book that could send shockwaves through the music industry. If the book ever sees the light of day, it could expose a pattern of exploitation that goes far beyond the music and into the very culture of how these powerful men operate. But it's not just industry insiders who felt the burn. Even fans and everyday people who got too close have emerged with stories that sound like something out of a conspiracy thriller. One particularly chilling account involves a young artist mentor program allegedly set up by Diddy. Promised a chance to learn from the best, participants were instead met with grueling contracts and impossible demands. One attendee described feeling like they had walked into a trap, with Diddy and his team dangling fame like a carrot, while stripping them of their intellectual property and creative rights. Jay-Z's name, too, has been tied to similar initiatives, with accusations that they were more about building personal empires than helping anyone else succeed.
That was all the people that went to the puffy parties. That was all the people that did all those things thinking that there was never going to be a consequence for what they were doing. Got punked out and pimped out by some greater desire. You shouldn't have a greater desire than being a man. So I believe that's a big problem with a lot of the actors out there because they get fluid. And next thing you know, once you go fluid, you...
And of course, there's the lingering shadow of other stars who reportedly fell victim to this toxic dynamic. Some of the biggest names in music and film have been rumored to carry scars from their dealings with Diddy and Jay-Z. While many of these stories remain unconfirmed, the sheer volume of rumors suggests there's more truth than fiction here. A former actor, once destined for A-list status, reportedly left the industry entirely after a falling out with the two moguls. They've since spoken privately about feeling betrayed and discarded after refusing to compromise their values. The actor's story is just one of many, and it raises an unsettling question. How many careers have been quietly destroyed to protect the reputations of these so-called legends?
Now you know to be hands-off with somebody. A number of producers come in to make the approach, and you threaten to punch them in the mouth, or threaten to knock their head off for talking to you like, or looking at you like you're a woman. You know, when you approach a real man about his masculinity, you're going to get a real reaction back. It's a difference when a guy walks in a room and when a man walks into a room. And a man don't take the same things that a guy will accept.
And as for Howard, his decision to speak out isn't just brave, it's potentially career-ending. Because let's be real, Hollywood has a long memory, and it doesn't take kindly to those who break the unspoken rules. By pulling back the curtain on Diddy, Howard is taking on an entire system, and the risks are enormous. But maybe that's the point. Maybe Howard has reached a place where he's willing to risk it all to shine a light on the darkness he's seen. Or maybe he knows something we don't. Something that's yet to come to the surface, something that could change everything.
I've lost businesses because I don't bend over in that way. I don't compromise. I don't play roles. I don't kiss a man. I don't do that because the man card means everything.
So here's where we're at. A story that started with one man's allegations has spiraled into a much larger conversation about power, control, and accountability in the entertainment industry. And the more we learn, the clearer it becomes that this is just the beginning. Because if there's one thing we've learned from Hollywood scandals, it's that the truth has a way of coming out, eventually. The only question is, who's next? Who else will find the courage to speak up? And how far will the consequences ripple when they do? Let us know what you think down in the comments. Are we looking at a moment of reckoning for Hollywood? Or is this just another story that will fade away with time? And most importantly, who do you think might be the next domino to fall? Let's talk about it. We'll see you in the next one.